Okay, well, hi everyone, and thank you very much for watching or listening. Liam Hartree here today, and I've got a very special guest on the show today. I've got professional strongman and powerlifter David Todd, I believe also known as Thumper. Very cool name. This man has some amazing accolades to his name. I've got a list of them here because he's achieved so many, but we've got Wales Strongest Man, Britain's Strongest Man, British powerlifting champion, second in the European Championships. We've got second place, third place, fourth at the under 90 kg category. We've got many accolades here in powerlifting and in strongman, so across two sports. As well as that, this man has a very inspirational story from his journey through the world of lifting, what it's done for him, how it's improved him as a person, things he's bounced back from. So stay tuned, everybody. Could be some great sports content, but some great inspiration and some mindset topics as well. So mate, that's enough of me talking about you in third person. Sorry about that. Thank you very much for coming on the show. Thank you for making time for this. And, it's great to have you here, to be honest.
Thank you very much for having me. It's exciting to do my first podcast. So we'll see what I can do for you. Hopefully it won't go too badly.
No, it'll go well. It'll go well. Like I said to you before, I mean, you've achieved a lot of things. I know you're a very humble, very chill guy, but it's time to get the story out there and, get you the credit you deserve and inspire some people along the way, I think, So let's go back to it in terms of the start of your sports journey. Now, I don't always start at the beginning with everybody, but in this case, we'll go back in time a little bit. Now, you started off with powerlifting before strongman, as I understand it. So talk to us a little bit about basically where you first got interested in that and what the inspiration was for you right in the beginning, please.
I trained in a few gyms before I settled in one, and I settled in one in Swansea, which was about as basic a gym as you can find. In the winter, the water in the fridge would be better to drink than the water under the desk, because the water under the desk would freeze solid. It was that cold in it. In the summer, you'd be training in like 35 degrees. You'd be soaking wet. It was an old shack. It was brilliant. So I started training there with a couple of my friends, and there was a powerlifter called Phil Richards, and at the time, a youngster called Chris Whitelock were in there. And I saw them training quite regularly, and they were moving big weights. And I was in my 20s. Well, I was 20. I was starting out, and I was keen to give it a go. When I started, I realized how terrible I was at squatting. I was all right at deadlifting, and I could bench press quite a bit. As any boy starting in the gym jumps into bench press, it's probably the most important exercise for them. But I got into it, and Phil got me into a competition or two, and that was it. I enjoyed it, and I stuck with it. It became a quite a good addiction for me to set into. And that's how it started.
That's where it started. That's a cool start to the story. I love that. And obviously at that time, did you ever expect to take all of this as far as you have now? Or at the time, were you just sort of enjoying learning about it and sort of taking things one step at a time? Or were you planning quite far ahead type of thing?
Phil was a multiple IPF champion at the time, multiple time champion, both worlds and Europeans. I do believe that Chris Whitelock had competed in two British championships and done really well. So they were of a high standard. So watching them and training alongside them, it was quite inspiring. So that was a goal, was to go into the Welsh powerlifting competitions, to progress then up to the bigger standards, the better standards. And I managed it. I managed to lift a few Four Nations competitions, and even lifted in the first bowler or IPF Commonwealth Championships up in, I do believe it was Northampton. And that was I think it's 2007. That was a long time ago. A long time ago.
Yeah, well, it's really cool, first of all, with training with those guys, with Phil and Chris, because it's a good lesson for life, isn't it? That success breeds success. There's all these sayings go around, the iron sharpens iron and this, that, and the other. But it is true, you're around good people, it rubs off on you, or not just you personally, but anybody. And the same with bad people. Surround yourself with people who don't have those goals. That rubs off as well. So it's very important who you have in your life. So yeah, those first successes, those early successes. Tell us a little bit more about that. I mean, with this, you don't have to be a really narrow question about it, but just what you remember sort of fondly about it, looking back on it now in terms of your earlier successes and what your life was like at that time when you started to achieve things.
I was a lot younger, so I managed to balance working, nightclubbing and training very well. I'd be sober for some of my sessions and in a terrible state for some of them, but it was character building, but it was good. We had a good atmosphere in the gym. There are an awful lot of very, very strong guys in there, and everyone got behind everyone. So it was quite easy to go down. If you were having a bad session, they'd push you through it. I've been quite fortunate all the way through powerlifting and strongman as well, that I've had good people to train with and around, or even if I'm training on my own, I've had good people I can speak to if I need to, if anything's going badly, or if you just don't feel the way that you should feel. I think one of my favorite sort of memories from my first sort of competing international powerlifting was we traveled to Scotland, and well, there's two. I managed to get a bench press record, which at the time I thought was amazing. It was 165 kilos. I do believe that record has been taken to, I think, 237 now by a young man called Owen Hubbard, which is incredible, which I was never going to get anywhere near, especially not when I was in my 20s. But I managed to get it. I wouldn't say it was bad reffing, but I passed an elderly gentleman who'd gone to get several cups of tea and had them on a tray, and his hands were shaking as he was carrying the tray. So I stopped and I opened a door for him and then took the tray off him so that he could walk through and carry his tray. A few minutes later, the same elderly gentleman was reffing me when I was bench pressing. So he awarded me a white light for a very dubious bench press, and somehow another ref awarded me a white light, which I don't know how, but I managed to get my first bench press record that way, which was a good story. On that same trip, myself and Mike Smith, we were bunked up together next to Phil Richards and another gentleman called Geraint Nicholas. And myself and Mike Smith decided to sneak off. We were having a few drinks before the competition. That's how we used to prep back then. And we took Phil and Geraint's key card and we emptied their hotel room. Not just the hotel room of their kit, we emptied the pillows, we emptied their mattress, we took the coat hangers, we emptied the lot. We took it all into our room, which was next door to theirs. And then we fell asleep and went to bed until security came and woke us up to get their stuff back. So we've had a bit of fun.
Yeah, good memories, man. It's good memories, and it's one of those things where I like that because there's these little things that go on that are the things people don't see. Like people see your records and everything like this, and they know what you've achieved. But there's these little things that go on behind the scenes, and that's what makes it a special memory, isn't it? So obviously, as we move forward in time a little bit with this, you were actually out of the game for a few years as well. And correct me if I ever move around the timelines or this the wrong way, but I think that this was soon after what we were saying there. So can you share with us a little bit about that time? Now, it's not so much about the details of what happened, although we'll touch on that to give people context, but just in terms of like how you came back from it. But let's start off with what happened when you were out of the game for a little while.
I started, I changed jobs a couple of times, and I was partying a lot more, and I managed to cut myself in work. I worked in a catering butcher's at the time, and I had developed blood poisoning from it. So I'd spent probably 7 or 8 years gradually gaining weight and training and progressing. And within a month, I lost nearly 10 kilos. I was in hospital. I was on a drip for 10 days, 10 days. I came out, and just the difference in everything. I looked different. I sounded different. My clothes sat different. I tried going back to the gym. weights that I would have used as a warm-up were now horrendously heavy. I wasn't myself, and it was probably the biggest knock to my confidence I'd ever had. I was destroyed, and it took quite a while to get back into training, or to get back into the gym, because obviously I trained in the same gym for quite a few years by then. And you've grown it, you've watched everyone get bigger, you've got bigger and stronger and better, and people ask you for advice the same way as you'd ask them, or you'd ask others when you started. And it was terrible. It destroyed me as a person. I didn't want to go out. I didn't want to see my friends. It totally changed my life. But I had good friends. I had a lot of friends, and so I managed to get back into training. It was probably a couple of years later, and we'd been to watch a strongman competition, and a couple of the guys there I knew. So I decided if I was going to get back in the gym, I'd like to try something different. So I joined a different gym, started a bit of training. And my first trip to a strongman competition, to a strongman training event, I think I was probably about 11 stone, 12 stone. And I was sat in a car with 4 guys who were probably all between 18 and 25 stone. I was dwarfed, and it was a very humbling session. We had a great session, but it was it was good fun. And after that, I met, I befriended and started training with a gentleman called Simon Thomas, who owns Celtic Strength. Until recently, it was a gym open in Clydach, but it's he built strongman kit. So myself and Chris Mellon, we used to train with Simon on a weekend, and then I'd train again in the week. And Simon helped me get into quite a lot of strongman competitions. And that was it. I fell in love with the sport. It was a brilliant sort of release. So different to powerlifting, which I was still powerlifting as well. It's where I started. I find powerlifting a much more sort of honest representation of progression. With strongman, depending on the events will all change. Some events are outside, some events are inside. There's different diameters on bars, there's different diameters on logs, different sacks from different companies. Everything's different. Whereas in powerlifting, there's a bar and there's weights. You can't change it wrong. Sometimes use different bars, but it's all pretty much bog standard. So you've still got that measurement of where you're progressing to, which is nice. So I think I'll always go back to powerlifting, but that's where, after the blood poisoning, coming back to training, that's where I sort of got interested and found my love for strongman.
Yeah, it's an incredible story bouncing back from that. I mean, when you told me that when we were messaging and everything, it's amazing. And I know, not to sound cliche here, but it does show people that what one man can do, another can do, if you get what I mean. And obviously coming back from a situation like that, something that knocks your confidence, obviously other people can as well, even if it's a different situation, but something that knocks them back. Very quickly, before we move into the strongman stuff, full pelt and everything like that, what would you say to anybody out there who's listening to this, who has, like, if there's people going through a rough patch at the moment? I know it's a pretty big question, but obviously you mentioned coming back from it through your friends and through certain things that you were doing as habits, obviously then finding the love for strongman. But if people are in a rough patch, what would you recommend them to do in terms of training or in terms of life in general to sort of pull themselves out of that a little bit? Maybe just 1 or 2 things, because it's a big topic, but just a couple of your things that matter to you.
I think with a lot of people, when they start getting down and everything gets on top of them, they tend to sit down or to stand still. And when you stand still, everything gets on top of you. It gets a chance to catch you. You've got to keep moving. You've got to do something. You can't just stay there and take everything hitting you head on. I found going to the gym, I wouldn't say that it was a therapy, but I just found that it was a good distraction. I'd go to the gym for 2-3 hours. I train, I do a little bit of walking, or maybe I do a bit of cycling or rowing. I had no one to answer to. I had nothing else there. A few times I trained with my friends. We'd go head to head on things, you know, one would cycle faster, one would bench more, you know, we'd enjoy it. It was a really nice distraction from everything else. And it was just important to find that distraction. You know, the gym isn't for everyone. Lifting weights isn't for everyone. But, you know, you can find something. The gym I train in now, they have massive classes. And I've trained in the rooms where they put the classes on, and the energy people are putting out is incredible. I'm sure not all those people are the happiest people in the world, but they're getting in, they're doing some horrendous looking exercises that I never wish to do in my life, but they're grafting for a solid hour. And I lift my weights alongside them, and I'm nothing but impressed by them. You know, I think anyone that try and throw yourself into something like that, you know, any sort of class, just surround yourself with people that are being positive. It's infectious. Positivity is infectious. Sorry, my dog is coming out. He wants to be smooth.
Oh, that's all right. You can join in if you want. Some people probably pop up at some point, but
Oh, yeah.
that's cool. But yeah, I mean, again, it's a great life lesson. You know, giving yourself purpose, you know, giving yourself something to focus on, something to enjoy. Again, being surrounded by good people, it's all very important. And I appreciate that, mate, to be honest, because it's like I say, it's a big part of the reason why I do these, just to show people not to give up and to keep going, and you know, these very simple things that they need. So great message about that. Let's jump into it more with the strongman. Now, obviously, you've had a lot of achievements with this, and we'll definitely talk about some of the key ones. I'd love to talk about all of them, but we'd be here until next week, I think. So the way I usually sort of condense this down a little bit in situations like this is to talk about your personal favorite ones. Now, I know this is a pretty big question, but I love asking this because you never know what's going to come back, like which one is going to come back, because obviously you've got well, I listed out at the beginning, I mean, British and European and Wales strongest man. You've got, you know, you've got so many things going on. Which ones are your favorites when you look back on it now? It doesn't have to be necessarily in time, in order, just the ones that stand out as being the most special to you personally, basically.
I think at 2 European Championships, I won the first deadlift I did, which was I do believe we were deadlifting Ducati bikes on a frame. And I matched the winner the second year. I qualified for the second year because I placed. I matched the winner the next year for reps. I had a rep disallowed because I didn't wait for the down signal, but I pulled it, so I'm taking that as a match. So it was that's it. You know, I've competed against amazing people, and I think competing against them and just going all out is probably better. In 2017, I do believe I ran a frame against a guy who's Britain's strongest man under 18 right now, Dean McVie, and I'd never been beaten on a frame, and I'd gone against some quite big people at the time. And when me and Dean went head to head, Dean pulled off faster than me, so I thought I'll accelerate and I'll take him. So I accelerated, and Dean just pulled away from me, and that, you know, that was incredible. He was fantastic. It was amazing. The year later, at Europe's, we had I think it was a 320 kilo yoke. I smashed it as fast as I could. Daniel Ashford went after me, won the comp overall, and he smashed me. It was amazing. Such a fantastic. I don't think the best things I've seen are things that I've done. I think it's people I've competed against, but being there to witness it, it was amazing. The first ever British Championships I was in, James Ward, I think it was the last British Championships he did. He competed with, I do believe, 2 serious injuries, and he didn't drop an event. And it was one of the most impressive things I'd ever seen. It was just brilliant. And, you know, just to be around things like that, they're great. It's just so great to be around.
Absolutely, that is amazing. As you say, you know, the atmosphere, the community, and seeing some of the other greats do their thing. I mean, it must be mind-blowing from what you're saying there. I love that. That's why I like asking that question, because what matters most to people is obviously it's different for different people, and you've had some amazing achievements. I thought, okay, best way to narrow this down is your favorites. On the subject of that as well, I mean, when you're winning these major tournaments or you're placing very high in them and this type of thing, what is the reaction like from your community, your family, your mates? Obviously, with the gym, you know, your mates in the gym and everything, you're all sort of in that together. But in terms of like the wider world and you know the recognition that you get from people, what is it that sort of feedback like for you?
I think in 2017, BBC Wales came down and interviewed me in the butchery where I work, and they put me on the cover of I don't think it was Evening Post. It was one of the newspapers from down here. And there's an elderly gentleman who works in the Tesco's by where I work, so I pop in there from time to time to get fuel. And still to today, so what are we, 5 years later, the gentleman still questions what I'm buying to eat and asks me if I should be eating these things, or he'll tell me I shouldn't be buying sweets, or he still speaks about it. And it was quite nice. A lot of people don't take any notice. My son, my youngest son, in 2021, I placed second in Wales' Strongest Man under 90 kilos. And I came back and I gave him the trophy. I said, I won this, it's for you. I'm not allowed to keep any of my trophies. He gets them all. And he said, why is it silver? I said, I came second. And he said, you need to try harder. He said, you need to be more buff. So that's what I get off him. This year I placed second again. I had tonsillitis and I was lucky to finish the comp. I was dying. And I came back and I was wrecked. And he said, you need to try better. He said, this is the same one as last time. So he's not very sympathetic as far as family goes. But both sons have always been impressed with the competitions. They love the trophies. But yeah, on the whole, like people in the gym take notice. Obviously, it's an interest to some of them, but most people they don't understand. They don't comprehend the difference in weight of what you're moving. Or some strongman shows are good because they'll have implements to move, not so much a bar. When people see you deadlift a car or when you're flipping a tire, it's something big, it's impressive. But if it's something standard that they see every day, then it just doesn't catch them the same way. Even though it might be twice as heavy, because it doesn't look special, it doesn't stand out at all.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, isn't it? You have to be in there doing it to fully understand what it's like. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, as long as they're encouraging, but I always say it's the people who they don't know what it's like. They're the ones always point the finger and say things, aren't they? At the end of the day.
Yeah.
So, going back to one thing you said there with your children as well, do you think they'll follow in your footsteps and be lifting and all this sort of thing in the future, or is that not something that's sort of on the cards at the moment?
My eldest did a bit of weightlifting a few years ago. Then the times of the classes changed, so we couldn't get him there quick enough after school. He's very interested in computers right now. He starts college when they go back to school. I hope he'll be interested in it, but it's not something I'll push him in. My youngest can't wait to go to the gym. He's so keen to train. He's constantly trying to move stuff around the house to do press ups. Dexter's autism, so he has trouble listening and sort of focusing. So once he calms a little bit, then I'll do a bit more with him. But right now we train together. Sometimes we mess about. We'll do some squats or we'll do some press ups. But it's something he's got to get into a little bit. He's a bit erratic, but it'll come. He's interested in it. So, but he's only 10 as well, so I don't want to push him while he's so young. It'd be nice to let him play with his friends and be a child first.
Absolutely, yeah, let them grow into it. But
Yeah.
it's nice that the interest is there, though, and you can do a bit of training together and things. It's nice because either way, whether people sort of compete or whatever they do, having that little bit of that foundation of having a routine and discipline and
Yeah.
things, and it's got to be good. But that's cool, man. That's pretty cool. So we touched on the Wales, wins and second place and everything like that. Obviously, we need to touch on Britain's strongest man and your achievements there more specifically, because like I said earlier, touching on a few key ones, and we won't have time to talk about them all and everything. But I'd like to get your memories from that, from an achievement as big as that, and just what you enjoyed most about it, what you remember about it now, just those events in your own words, really, with Britain's strongest man. I think that's a good one to touch on as well.
I've competed 3 times in Britain's at under 90, and my highest placing in that has been 5th. So it was they're hard comps. The guys competing are brilliant. They're amazing. So it's good just to go and mix with them. A lot of these boys are competing at Worlds and doing fantastically at Worlds. In 2017, I won Wales' strongest man under 80 kilos and then progressed to win Britain's. I wasn't going to go. I pretty much pulled out of the comp. It was, oh God, I can't remember where it was. It was quite a distance away. And I needed to change my car. So I changed my car, which was a big expense. And I just thought, well, it's one of those things. I'll have to brush it off this year and I'll qualify next year. And I spoke to the organisers about it, and they said, look, we really want you to come and compete. We're short on numbers. We don't want people pulling out. They offered to help me get there. And I thought, well, it's 4 weeks away. I can put some money to one side. I'm sure I can manage to get there. And I flipped my car. So I was driving over the mountain, and the car slipped on some grass, went up a verge, flipped over, and just travelled on the roof for a bit. So I went to the hospital after it, and I had internal bruising down on my chest and my stomach. So then they told me that I couldn't compete. So because I'd been told I couldn't, then I thought, well, that's not for someone else to decide. That's for me to decide. So I went, and I had a terrible time making weight. I couldn't put myself through the usual regime I do to cut weight because my body just wasn't enjoying it. Where I'd taken a knock, it didn't like it at all. So I resorted to red wine the night before the comp and hot baths, which got me very close. When I turned up the weigh-in, I then had to put black sacks on and get on a bike. The bike was outside. It was an electric bike which had no plug. The seat was jammed all the way down, so were the handlebars. So my knees were knocking the handlebars as I cycled. I think after about 30 minutes on the bike, I managed to make weight. The organizer that was weighing me in actually toweled me down. And he was, he still laughs about it today. He still mocks me for it. But the comp itself then was great. I managed to somehow rehydrate enough to do pretty well in every event. And I think I won 2 or 3 events. One bad event, and I was mid-table in the pressing, which is pretty much standard for me when it comes to pressing. And managed to walk away with a win. I was over the moon with it, especially since 5 weeks out I wasn't going, and then 3 weeks out I crashed the car. So it was I was shocked.
Yeah. Again, like I said earlier on, mate, what's really cool about that is again, it's things that people don't see. Do you know what I mean? Because it's something that does come up a lot when I do these interviews, like the car thing. I mean, fair play to you going on and doing everything you did after that. I mean, that's really something. And I know it's what professionals do. People have that right mindset, but still, I mean, it's very, very cool. I've got a lot of respect for that, and that, funny enough, I mean, we might as well go here now because I said at the beginning about the mindset stuff and all that type of thing, and I think that leads in nicely, doesn't it? To obviously the clue is in the name, the fact you have to have a strong body to do what you do, obviously, but you have to have a strong mind as well. Something again that people don't see from the outside looking in, when you're building up for a competition, do you do any mental techniques? I mean, a lot of people talk about like this visualizing and various things you can do that come up a lot when I do these interviews. Are you one of those people who sort of visualizing it, focus on it, pushing it out of your mind altogether, maybe, or what's your process for that?
I switch off. I
Mm.
put, I know a lot of people will look at who they're competing against. I tend not to. I know when I get to a comp, I know if we've got a deadlift as a first event, by the time I get there, I've pulled 1,000 deadlifts in training. So I don't need to think about it. In fact, not thinking about it is probably going to work better because the habits you've built up over that last 1,000 are going to pay dividends for the next one. I don't care what anyone else is doing because I know I'm going to go all out. So if their all out is better than my all out, that's it. I can't beat that. I'm going to go all out. So if we're both on 10 reps, then I'm going for that 11th rep, no matter what. If I get it or not, it doesn't matter if they get it. I'm going for it. I think if you dwell too much on stuff like that, you'll either put yourself on the back foot, you start doubting yourself, or you focus too much on what someone else is doing. I used to get fired up before competition. Now I tend to relax. I enjoy walking the dog a lot more before competitions. I'll take more saunas. I'll just enjoy things a little bit more. I like to believe that I've done the best I can in training. I like to try and make sure that I've either achieved every lift that I need, or I've repped close enough to it that I know I'm going to get it on the day. And that's it. Sorry, my dog's sitting on me now. Get off. And that's what I like to do it. I know some people put too much focus on the comp, and stress isn't going to go well for you. It's going to tire you out. So why worry about it? You've done all those lifts in training. Even if you haven't had the kit, you've got as close as you can. One day isn't going to change it. If you can't do it, then you can't do it. Being stressed, worrying, panicking, it's not going to change it. Just relax and go for it. You'll do so much better being relaxed and calm than you will being stressed. You start wearing yourself out, and that's no good for anyone. Yourself, if you start worrying about something, your heart starts going, you start sweating, you're panicking, your mouth dries out. That's no good to compete. You don't want to compete in that state. If you're happy, if you're smiling, if you're relaxed, you're going to be so much more pliable to what you've got to do. And that's what I try to take into competitions. I just find that it works so much better for me that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, like I said earlier, that's a really good life lesson as well. I mean, it's a really good lesson for competing in sports. But I think when people have something big coming up in any area of life, that side of things is true. And yeah, you burn up so much energy otherwise, and it just goes out the window. I know I know how that feels. So as well as that, you mentioned some ways that you're training and you sort of adapted little things. Now, I know this is going to be a pretty big question, but obviously with a lot of these things in sports, as people progress and as they go forward, they get sort of more in tune with themselves and, tweak little things and make these alterations. Can you share with us a few of the things, a few of like the changes or the ways you've adapted in terms of strongman? Or I mean, this is probably going to overlap a little bit with powerlifting as well, but some of the things maybe you were doing years ago that you're not doing now, or some of the things you've improved, some of the things you've discovered along the way, if that makes sense. Because a few times as you've been mentioning this, you've said little things, I changed this, I changed that. And I just think it's a really interesting topic of how people develop in their training, if you get what I mean with this one. Yeah.
Years ago, I used to believe that if I went to the gym, I had to train. If I was training my back, I'd have to train every single part of my back. I'd have to go all out. If I was benching, I'd have to flat bench. I'd do tricep press. I'd tricep pull. I'd go through everything, and I'd burn myself out. I wouldn't progress for a long time, and I'd overtrain because I thought that's what would get me better. For years and years, I try and eat. I just try and eat everything, because the people I'd spoken to just say, "I eat whatever, eat anything, eat this, eat that, eat." As I got older, I've realized I don't even need to eat the same volume to gain weight. It's just I need to be a bit more specific with what I eat and when I eat it, especially before and after training, and it makes such a big difference. Training wise, I know now I don't need to kill myself in the gym. You know, if I can go there and get a solid hour's training on my main stuff, and then I can do my assistance afterwards, then that's perfect. If I can give everything to the main stuff I need to, whereas before I try and put everything into everything, and I'd walk away, I'd be sore, I'd be aching, you know, I'd need a day recovery between sessions. Work then was hellish, because obviously you'd be aching. My boss even at one point pushed me under a table because I couldn't bend down properly, and she saw it quite funny, because I was chops into her, that she'd push me under and I was stuck under the table because I couldn't get up, which she found hilarious. But yeah, I used to be quite aggressive and fired up when I'd go to competitions. I used to let my mouth get me into quite a bit of trouble. I once did Wales' Strongest Man under 80 kilos and under 90 kilos the same day, actually event after event. We did the under 80s event first, then I do the under 90s event, then the under 80s event, then the under 90s event. Because in the build up to it, I was mouthing off to one of the other boys and said that we should splice the categories because there weren't many, to which he said, "Oh, well, if you want to do both classes, just sign up and do it." So I thought, fair enough, I will. So I signed up and did it. A couple of years after that, I got myself a coach, and one of the agreements myself and Reese had was that I wasn't allowed to do anything stupid like that without speaking to him first, which which I grew out of, so that wasn't too bad. But yeah, I've changed a few things. I tend to look after myself a little bit more now. I do a lot more mobility stuff. Sadly, I didn't start it early enough. Anyone sort of starting training, looking to compete in strongman or powerlifting, don't neglect your mobility stuff. You know, I was 16, 17, 18 years training without doing any, and it's caught up with me. I'm trying to do it now, but it's, you know, I'm trying to outdo those years of not doing anything, which is hard, but it's coming, maybe. I'm trying. But yeah, I've changed quite a few things.
Yeah. I mean, it's a brilliant sort of topic because it shows your development, not only as an athlete, but as a person as well, if that makes sense, you know, and it shows the little bit of the deeper side of things. When it comes to this type of thing, I mean, obviously a lot of people in gyms and a lot of people in sports will know about this, but from the outside looking in, when it comes to pushing through the concept of pain barriers and all this type of thing, obviously what you're doing, I mean, it hurts. I mean, everyone knows that. What are your techniques for sort of pushing past that and everything? I mean, because I'm trying to think of a few things here that are a little different and things that people don't always see from the outside looking in. And as I said before, things that people can apply to different life areas, whether it's sports or whether it's something else. And I think this is one of them, because you have to be able to master pain, you know, no pain, no gain, all this type of thing. What's your technique for that personally, like in your mind and everything?
I focus on the fact it's only going to be a few seconds. If you're moving something and it's heavy, if you're repping stones and they're ripping the skin off your arms, if you're deadlifting, you know, if you're pulling a car, your hands are tearing, your back is pulling. It's only a few seconds. Most of the events are 60 seconds to 75 seconds. I just keep telling myself it's going to finish soon, and just try to last the time up. Or move faster. If it's a moving event, run faster. If it's horrible, if it hurts, go quicker. The finish is faster. When you pick farmers up, if it's uncomfortable in your hands, if your back is aching, you know, if your legs are folded under it, run. If you run in 10 seconds, you don't need the extra 65 seconds. You've got it down. You know, everyone's got a level of pain that they're happy with, but if you're going to compete, it's not always going to be nice. You know, there's a lot of boys do a lot more painful things. It's not as bad as being punched in the head or, you know, dropped on your face. So it's just that a little bit of pain isn't gonna do anything much to you. If anything, it just teaches you to concentrate on what you're doing a little bit more, to focus on something else. So that, you know, that's what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a cool topic, as I say, because people can learn about that. You know, this type of discipline can be applied to different things. And we'll come back to competitions now. But my last thing on the sort of intangible topics is, you know, what I call it, like the things people don't see, the mindset stuff, all that type of thing, is I also like to touch on with this as well. Oh, we've touched on visualizing, we touched on goal setting. Sorry, something popped into my head and popped back out of my head then. Oh, I'd like to touch on this as well in terms of like when people come to you for advice now, do you give a lot of advice like around a gym and sort of pass on your knowledge, or is that something you do much of, or are you mostly still focused on your own training, your own? Because I know gyms are communities and people always share tips and things like that anyway. But for yourself personally, do you get a lot of people starting out or that type of thing come up to you and say, look, you know, what do I do with this? What do I do with that type of thing?
I've recently changed gyms, and I've changed gyms to an absolutely monstrous place. It's a fantastic setup. It's not like anywhere else I've ever trained. It's huge, and they're trying to push strongman and strongwoman themselves, which is incredible. Which is why I went there. It's a brilliant gym. It's called the Warehouse in Swansea, in Cumdee, and since being there, a lot of people have asked about different events, especially they have a competition on the weekend, and I'm reffing there. So obviously they've asked, knowing that I'm reffing, to see what is expected of them or what way they can do things. And I think if you train and you're not going to help anyone with stuff, you're in the wrong place. You know, you should be training in your shed or something. You shouldn't be in the gym. When I started, the gym I started in was full of people in their 40s and 50s, and they'd stop and help you if they saw you doing well. If they saw you doing something stupid, they'd throw something at you or slap you. You know, they'd swear at you. They'd tell you to stop. They'd show you how to do it. It meant nothing to them. You know, it was as simple as saying hello. Now I think there's a lot of people that will watch someone do something wrong just so that they can laugh at them in gyms. You know, the feeling in gyms isn't the same as it used to be. In all fairness, where I am right now, it's a good gym. You know, you don't see much of that. People seem happy to talk, happy to help. I haven't noticed anything untoward up there. Yeah, anyone that comes on, I'll help. If it's something that's beyond me, I literally put them on to. There's a guy called Tom Hibbert. He runs Winning Strength. I tell him to follow him on Instagram. Tom, there's nothing Tom doesn't know. He's a gentleman. I let him beat me plenty of times in competitions. He's a fantastic competitor. Also, there's another gentleman, Shane Germain. He runs MST Systems. Again, the amount of knowledge these two guys have got is unrivaled. And they both post up videos on their Instagrams, their YouTube channels. You know, it's a wealth of knowledge. You can learn so much. But a lot of people now are going down the road of being coached. So you don't have an awful lot of questions. But you know, you still get youngsters that come and they'll ask things. And yeah, I'll stop and help anyone. Sometimes it means a 12-hour session takes a lot longer, but people were decent enough when I was starting out to help me and correct me. So, you know, you owe it back. You got to give it back. Better to show someone and lose half hour of your time than to watch them do it wrong and see them get hurt. You know, because it costs you nothing to be tidy to someone.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where obviously I can tell it's the type of person you are, and it's, you know, it's something you're going to be doing, but at the same time touching on the reasons behind it and everything and passing on that knowledge. It's absolutely brilliant. And on the subject of giving back as well, you also do a bit of reffing and everything. You also give back to the sport in other ways. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing with that side of things, outside of just competing, but like reffing or anything else you do in that sort of way as well?
I love reffing at comps. Simon Thomas, who I mentioned before, he does a lot with the BNSF. I've reffed some brilliant competitions for them. I got to ref, which was probably one of the scariest things I'd ever done at the time. A gentleman called John Clark went to attempt the first 400 kilo deadlift for a natural strongman. And I had to sit out in front of him on my own and ref him. And, I was fine refing first timers doing their reps and things, but an actual world record, that sort of caliber was so intimidating to do. Sadly, John didn't get it then. He pulled it afterwards. But God, it was terrible for me. But no, reffing's great fun because you get to see people push so hard. And, with just a little bit of encouragement, they'll push so much past their comfort zone. And you really bring out, the good in people. You see them really, really try and really dig deep. And, people surprise themselves with what they can do. Reffing, loading at comps. Strongman is a small sort of community. So there's not a lot of, there's not much money for things like this. So people need to help out. People need to put back in. So I'm always happy to do it. And you're up close, you see some fantastic things. The first ever BNSF British Championships I reffed, I got to stand up and watch Mark Jeans, who's Wales' strongest man, or has been Wales' strongest man 5 times now, go head to head with the late Aaron Page on a stone over a yoke. Aaron won the comp, but the atmosphere was electric. People were screaming at them. We were standing there, myself and Tom Hibbert were reffing, and it was absolutely incredible. The things, and you're up right in front to see it, and you can't get better things than that in sport, especially if it's a sport you enjoy and you love. It's incredible.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it feeds back into some of what you were saying earlier when we said about your favorite moments and everything. Some of your favorite moments just being part of that world and the community and seeing some of the other greats do their thing. It makes a lot of sense. So moving into the last few topics, because the time's gone by quick, but we've talked about a lot. So moving into the last few topics, I remember what popped into my head, popped back out earlier as well. You mentioned about like this time with the two Wales competitions on the same day and all this type of thing, and sort of mouthing off this guy. And obviously now you seem much more chilled and much more mellow. So I was curious to get into ways in which competing at such a high level as you have has sort of changed you as a person in areas of your life outside of the sport itself, if that makes sense. Like when you're dealing with people and just in day-to-day life, it's obviously made changes to you. So I know it's a sort of an abstract one, but if you get what I mean with that, we can touch on that a little bit as well,
I think the biggest change for me is as my youngest son started getting older, you realize that he doesn't understand emotions and how people are. So you had to be a lot calmer, or I had to be a lot calmer, and I had to just be not as fired up as I was, which we got on so much better and we had so much fun, and it just carried over into everything else. I'd go to competitions, I'd watch better guys remain calm and not get so fired up and perform better. And it worked for me with my son, and it crossed over. It worked well in the competitions as well. You saved energy, you felt better going into the comp, you felt better coming out of the comp, you recovered faster, and it just made sense. So I put a lot of my progression down to learning how to be a dad with Dexter. With Kai, it came naturally. Kai was, just like a shadow from the start. But with Dexter, I had to change quite a bit. And now he is a tyrant to me. Now he is the bully and the mean one. but it's helped me progress through myself and my sport.
That's a beautiful message in all fairness. I appreciate you sharing that because, I always think no matter how many of these I do, when people are sharing things like that that are quite personal, I mean, there's no two ways about it. I really appreciate that because, everything we talk about, everything I ask of people is always for the benefit of people listening and all this type of thing is never to sort of probe into people. But yeah, sharing something like that, I appreciate that, mate, because it's a big life lesson. And I think as well, as men, we do have that problem where, certainly with myself as well, I keep those emotions in, and then it can only come out as like anger or this fire in your belly. It can only come out that way, and sometimes you have to stop and think, actually, I'm not feeling that way about it. That's coming from something else, and work on it. And it's a process a lot of people go through, and I think it's a very meaningful topic, to be honest, to put in there. So appreciate it on that one. Well, I think we need to talk about the future as well, because we spent some time obviously looking back, and you said at the beginning, I think before we started recording or whatever, about looking forward and the importance of looking forward. So obviously you've achieved a lot over a lot of years. We've talked about a few of them, not all of them, but we've touched on some good stuff. What is sort of lighting your fire going forward from this point forward? I don't mind how far ahead you want to go with this or whatever, but just to get a feel for some of your future plans, basically.
Well, most recent plans would be September the 3rd. I get to take part in the first UK's Strongest Man under 90 kilos. I've trained hard for it. I'm going to put in my best performance, but the guys there are incredible. So, I'm going there just to watch them compete and to enjoy myself on the day. After that, I think the next comp I'm taking seriously will be probably Wales' The Strongest Man next year. But as of this year, I'm a master. So I've been lifting for 20 years and competing with powerlifting and strong, 10 years with strongman. So next year I'm gonna do my first masters comp. So that's something I'm looking forward to. So masters is over 40s. Sadly, it will be an open weights class then. So I'm going to be one of the smallest ones there, I would expect. But it's something I look forward to. It's something I embrace. It'll be a bit of a different challenge. So it's something that's going to keep me fresh. Plus, like I said, I've competed at a good level for probably 18, 19 years. Competed for 20. I'm probably going to look into doing some courses and doing some coaching myself as I progress, because I'm pretty sure I'm not going to compete at a top level forever. And as you can imagine, having competed and pushed good competitors, watching yourself sort of fade away, it's never nice. There's things now which 5 years ago I was so much better at, and I'm sure in another 5 years' time there's going to be a whole list more that I was better at now than I am then. So I'll look to sort of tone my training back or my competing back, but maybe I can push others on. So stay in the sport. Plus, in another 5 years, my son will be 15, 16. So I would hope that he'll have a healthy interest in the gym by then. And we'll be able to work together doing something. That's what I would like. That's my goal.
Yeah, that's the future plans. That's very cool. I mean, obviously, in terms of the future competitions you mentioned there, good luck for them. I mean, for what it's worth, I will put that in there. But in terms of passing on your knowledge as well, it's absolutely wonderful because, like we've been talking about with this talk today, I mean, it's not just about the gym and about weights and everything, but like when you're teaching people about that, you're teaching them then sort of indirectly about life as well, and ways of being a better person, and all of these types of things. So I think it's going to be an amazing thing when you pass on a lot more of that knowledge. So that's very cool. So like I said, last couple of things, people you'd like to thank. One of my questions I usually close out with, or sort of we get into close to the end of these talks, is people who've thanked you, people who've helped you, sorry, along the way. Now, we mentioned this earlier with your coach, Reese, you mentioned Chris, you mentioned Phil, you mentioned a few different people over time who've helped you along the way. Is there anyone else who's helped you along the way who obviously you know them and they know you, but from the outside world, they're sort of behind the scenes in a way helping you, if that makes sense? And anyone else you'd like to give a mention to in that way? Anyone that comes to mind?
God, there'd be quite a long list. Right now, Chris Ware and David Govia at the warehouse, they've helped me out with my training up there. You know, they've taken me in up there. I'm really grateful for that. My son's mother, Kiki, has always looked after them for me when I've been away, even when I've had to go away for a few days. You know, she's never questioned it. She's always been really good. You know, Simon got me into strongman. Phil got me into powerlifting. Melanie Cuffer's come with me on most of my comps, has helped me no end. Cutting weight, making weight, getting to my comps. Just with everything. Even Mark Jeans, you know, when I used to train up in K2 with him, he was a massive help to me. You know, I've been very lucky. I've had a lot of people help me.
Yeah. Well, no man's an island, as they say. So
No.
even though we've been focused on your achievements, it's good to give a mention to those people who've helped you along the way. I'm glad we get in there, give them the credit they deserve as well. We've talked about some good stuff. Now we're coming up on an hour. I'm going to have to shoot off shortly as well because the time's absolutely flown. I'd like to thank you for coming on the show today. I'd like to thank you for being an open book with sharing things about your life that are quite personal, like with your family and, you know, the coming back from the blood poisoning thing and the highs and lows of some of your competitions. I know with the competitions, you know, we've talked about the highlights and there's a lot more we could always dig into, but it's some good highlights and I'm happy with it because we've got a nice mix of like the inspirational stuff, but also like the sports, like the fun stories and like the, you know, the things that have happened behind the scenes. And like, it's a nice blend of topics, which is what I was aiming for. You know, we tick that box and then some. So I just like to thank you for your time, mate. And I got to say, I didn't realize it was your first podcast until we started today, but it's an honor to be the first person to sort of put your story out there in this way, you know, and
It's been a lot less painless than I thought it would.
Oh, that's good, mate. That is good. Because there are bound to be some nerves with the first one, but you did really, really well with it. And I just want to thank you for coming on. And I believe this will inspire a lot of people and also get your story out there in the right way and give you, you know, the credit you deserve in that way, you know. So
I'd like to thank Body Freaks in Clansamlet, both Ken and Malay, for their continued help over the past few years. They made competing a lot easier for myself with my supplementation. Also, Harry from Synergy Labs he's helped me out, as well as Ben from Custom Built Physique, who's kept me with kit, which has been I've been most grateful for. And also Kelvin Gardner, who's always been on the phone anytime I've needed to whinge or sulk about something that's gone wrong with training. I suppose I should mention Ash Walker as well, who's been decent enough to train with me for the past few months, leading into my next comp. It's been a massive help.
thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel and there'll be more videos coming soon.